Welcome to chapter 27 of the book of Leviticus, the last chapter before we go into the book of Numbers, a continuation of the experience of these million Jews that left Egypt and went and stayed at Mount Sinai, where they hear all of these laws that are being set up for them by God through the hand of Moses. And here in the 27th chapter, we go find out about vows. A vow. The first vow mentioned in the Bible, the only one mentioned before this period of time in the Bible, was with Jacob, and that was in Genesis 28:20, as he was fleeing his brother Esau, going towards Mesopotamia to his, I guess it would be an uncle Laban, and he says on the way, "If the Lord God should be with me, and should guard me in this journey which I go, and should give to me bread to eat, and a cloak to put on, and will return me with safety unto the house of my father, and the Lord will be to me for God, that this stone which I set as a monument will be to me a house of God. And all whatever you should give to me, I will tithe a tenth of it to you." And that was at Bethel. A vow to me sort of is a spiritual New Year's resolution on steroids. It's something in the Old Testament that is mentioned a few times. It's not something that is mentioned a lot, but in the New Testament it's hardly mentioned at all, and we'll go through these different places where this is all the vows are all mentioned. But a vow, first of all, is not, I don't believe, is something that will determine the will of God. God's will is not going to be determined by me making a vow. And I think the health, wealth teachers, televangelists push that. If you give so much money, then God will reward you, and so forth. And actually, it could be the opposite. You can do a lot of things and then be called to be a martyr for Jesus Christ. So the idea of causing God to do what you want by giving up something is not valid as far as what I see. There was a movie with a man that was drowning in the ocean. Boat sank and he's swimming and he didn't know if he could make it to shore or not. So he started vowing, and he is going to give up all these things, immoral, having sex with women, drinking and smoking and so forth. And as he got closer to shore, he started taking them all back to when he finally got off the shore. The easiest vow that he could give up was the one that he stayed with. So that type of vow, of vowing, can happen. You can just vow and say something, I'm going to vow this, but when you put something behind the vow, then it means something. If I said I'm going to give up cigarettes and quit smoking, well, I think you could say that, and a lot of people do at New Year's, and then the first thing they do and the next day is start smoking again. Doesn't mean anything. But if you put up, let's say, your house and said that I am going to quit smoking, and my house, if I don't, then my house will go to so-and-so. Well, you would probably then quit smoking. So to me, a vow is more of a personal action that can help you determine a certain action. And what makes the action, it could be you're ceasing to do something, maybe something good. If he was just ceasing doing something bad, that wouldn't be a vow. I would just would be a con on God. But if you were having something good and you were going to cease doing something, I'm trying to think. Well, I guess like cigarette smoking wouldn't be a very good one, but something that was happening to you that was nice and easy, but you said you were not going to do it any more for a period of time. So basically, you would be putting up something behind the vow by your ceasing to do something, or the opposite, I'm going to do this if this happens. If you allow me to do more or less like Jacob's vow. Something was behind it, not so much with Jacob's vow, because it didn't have the value of, that is put behind the vow didn't appear in here until chapter 27. It's vowing. It's very similar to fasting also. And in the Old Testament, it's called nader. That's the Hebrew word number 5088 in Strong's numbering of the Hebrew Old Testament, the nader. And in the Mishnah, it has, from page 264 to 293, it has the nadarim, which is the vows, and the Nazirite vow is also included with that. So vowing is something that is closer to something that the Jews did because of this setup of what vows, how you did it. Today, it's quite a bit different. Hardly anybody vows anything. I don't think I've ever vowed anything in my life. But in the Old Testament, we have a foolish vow. That was with Jephthah, one of the judges. Mentions this in Judges 11:30 and 31. And his vow was, if by delivering up you should deliver up the sons of Ammon in my hand, then it will be concerning the one going forth, whoever might come from out of the doors of my house for meeting me and my returning in peace from the sons of Ammon, that it will be to the Lord, and I will offer him, the Lord, a whole burnt offering. And Jephthah's daughter came out when he came home, the first one. So she was instructed never to marry, and all of her girlfriends went out and cried over her virginity, that she would never have a man. And this was something that the women of Israel went out and cried over Jephthah's daughter for years. I don't know if they still do that or not, but that was a foolish vow because of, I would think it was foolish. I don't know if you want to make your daughter be something that's unnatural, or that, that just because you're vowing, but that was the vow of Jephthah. Then the next vow that's mentioned is the vow of Hannah, the mother of Samuel, who, when she vowed, she said, O Lord of hosts, if looking you should look upon the humiliation of your bondwoman, that is, she didn't have a child, and should remember me, and should not forget your bondwoman, and should give to your bondwoman seed of a male, then I will put him before you, dedicated until the day of his death, and an iron razor shall not ascend upon his head. And Samuel was born, and she brought him to the temple, and he stayed with Eli the rest of his life. But his mother would come and bring him clothes and food and so forth. And she had other children then. In the New, that's about the only ones in the Old Testament that are mentioned. In the New Testament, it mentions in Acts 18:18 that Paul had his head shorn in Cenchreae for a vow. It doesn't say what the vow was, but I think that's the only vow that's mentioned. Well, there's another one here after that. Acts 21:23 mentions 4 men with vows. When Paul did return to Jerusalem, these men had vows, and the people thought Paul was teaching people not to do things by the law. So the leaders in Jerusalem of the Christians told Paul to go and spend money for them buy these things for their vow, so that they would know that he's doing the things of the law. And then in Acts 26:29, Paul says, I would make a vow even to God, both in a little and in much, not only for you, but also all the ones hearing me today to become such as to like what I am, accept these bonds. And I think that was to King Antipas in Judea, and Felix, the governor, and vowing that, they would be like him. But now he didn't actually make a vow there. And then, at least I wouldn't consider that a true vow, and then he said, and then Romans 9:8, for I would make a vow, I myself, and would, these are woulds, to be anathema from the Christ for my brothers. And so if that was a possibility, then he would make a vow that he would be anathema, something dedicated to consumption. And then in 2 Corinthians 13:7 and 9, here it says, but I make a vow to God for you to not do anything evil. But this also we make a vow, your readying. Now, whether these were actual true vows or just vows of the mouth. And then the last mentioned of a vow, it was in James 5:15-16, and it says, and the vow of belief will deliver the weary one, and the Lord will raise him, that is the sick. And if he should be committing sins, it shall be forgiven him. Acknowledge to one another the transgressions, and make a vow for one another, so that you should be healed. So I suppose then you would make a vow for somebody. You could, Lord, I'm making a vow that I will dedicate the certain time to doing things, emailing people and telling them, I don't know, whatever it would be about Jesus, something like that. If you would have shower blessings on this other person that you're caring about, something like that. And then it says, beloved, concerning all things, I make a vow for you to prosper for all things. So to be in health as your soul prospers. It's sort of a lightweight vow there. And so with that, now we'll go back to the book of Leviticus and the value of vows. So these vows, during that period of time, they had to put something up for the vow. You just couldn't vow it and have it wouldn't mean anything. They had to do it the correct way, and this is the correct way that God sets it up. I'll just go right on through here, and we've pretty much went through all the different types of vows. So this is just basically what's behind a person is to put behind the vow. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the sons of Israel, and you shall say unto them, a man, anthropos, whoever should vow a vow for a value of his life to the Lord, it will be the value of a male from 20 years unto 60 years. So the value for a person in that period of time, in that age group, he's a value for his life. He's vowing something for his life. His value will be 50 double drachmas of silver by the holy weight. And the female will be the price of 30 double drachmas, 20 less. And if from 5 years old unto 20 years old, young person, the value of the male shall be 20 double drachmas, and the female 10 double drachmas. And from a month unto 5 years, the value shall be of the male 5 double drachmas of silver, and the female 3 double drachmas of silver. And if from 60 years old and up, if indeed it might be a male, his value shall be 15 double drachmas of silver. For the female, 10 double drachmas. And if he might be of low estate for a value, he's broke, doesn't have any money, he shall be stood before the priest. And the priest shall value him, just as the hand of the one making a vow is able to afford. Thus the priest shall value him. So he could value him a very low amount because he doesn't have any money, but he does want to make the vow. But he does put something behind, up, sort of like a spiritual pawning something. You take your item to a pawn shop, and you give the pawn broker a watch, and he gives you $20, and then it's his until you either come back and redeem it, or you let it go and it becomes his. But if you do come back, then you generally have to pay an extra, and which the people did here for the vows, and they could buy them back and so forth. And it says, and if it be from the cattle being offered of them as a gift to the Lord, the doron is a Corban offering, general offering. Whoever should give of these to the Lord, it shall be holy. That is, whatever the thing was, it shall be separated. It's not and no longer his. It's separated to God. It's in a completely different place. It's not something that's just free. He shall not change it good for bad, nor bad for good. Once it's set, it's set. And if by bartering he should barter it cattle for cattle, it and the thing bartered shall be holy. So if he changes it for something else, now exactly how they did all this, you have to read all those places in the Mishnah, which I have right here, which all those pages, starts at 264. And after you find out everything about it, let me know what you think. And if any unclean beast, which would be like a camel, horse, or donkey, of which is not offered of them as a gift to the Lord, because they're unclean, he shall set the beast before the priest. So he can vow these because they are worth something, draft animals and so forth. And the priest shall value it between good and between bad. And as far as the priest valuing it, so it will stand. So the priest looks at the animal, and one animal, okay, this is worth $20, the other one's only worth $5. That's sick. And whatever the priest says, that's it. And if the one ransoming should ransom it, he shall add the fifth part to the value of it. So if he wants it back later, I suppose, then he gives the fifth part back for the value of it, for using it as a vow. And a man, whoever should sanctify his house holy to the Lord, then the priest shall value it between good and between bad. Whatever the priest shall value it, so it shall stand. Sort of like I was saying before, if you say I'm going to quit smoking cigarettes, and I vow my house, it's worth $400,000, well, then you probably will quit. And if the one sanctifying it should redeem his house, so afterwards you quit smoking for that period of time, then you pay so much money in addition, the fifth part. He shall add unto it the fifth part of the money for the value, and that goes to the priest in the tabernacle, and it shall be to him. And if a man should sanctify from the field of his possession to the Lord, then the value shall be according to its sowing. A core of barley equals 50 double drachmas of silver. So now we see what the grain is worth. And if from the year of the release, that's the 50th year, he should sanctify his field according to his value, it shall stand. But that is 50 years. But if he should sanctify his field last after the release, the priest shall count in addition to it the money for the years remaining. So if you did it in 25 years, then it would only be worth half unto the next year of the release, and it shall be deducted from his valuation. And if the one sanctifying should ransom the field, and if the one sanctifying the field should ransom it, he shall add the fifth part of the money to the value of it, and it will be his. And if he should not ransom the field and should give back the field to another man, no longer shall he ransom it. So he gives it over and sells it to somebody that's no longer ransomable. But the field coming forth from the release will be holy to the Lord. As the land being separated to the priest, it will be his possession. So I'm thinking here, well, the land, if you bought some land, it was had a vow upon it, then you got it, but then it's going to go somehow to the priests, the Levites. You can use it for a certain period of time. And if from the field of which he acquired, which is not from the field of his possession, that he should sanctify to the Lord, the priest shall impute to him the full value from the year of the release, and he shall render the value in that day as holy to the Lord. And in the year of the release he shall give back the field to the man from whom he acquired it, of whom was in possession of the land. And all value will be by holy weights. 20 oboli will be the double drachma. Now, every firstborn, these are not ransomable, not to use for a vow, because they are already the Lord's. Every firstborn, whichever should be born among your cattle, will be to the Lord, and not anyone shall consecrate it, if for anything else. If also a calf, if also a sheep, it is to the Lord. And if of the four-footed creatures of the unclean he should barter the camel, the horse, or donkey for the value of it, then he shall add his fifth part to it, and it will be to him. But if he should not ransom it, it shall be sold according to its valuation. Now, I don't understand all the details of how they do it, but you get an idea that this is a valuation behind a vow. And every offering for consumption, whichever a man should present to the Lord of all as much as is to him, from man unto beast, and from a field of his possession, he shall not sell it nor ransom it. It's going to the Lord. It's an offering. Every offering for consumption will be a holy of holies to the Lord. In all, whatever should be presented from men, it shall not be ransomed, but to death it shall be put to death. If it's given to the Lord, it's a sacrifice. And every tenth of the land, from the seed of the land and from the fruit of the wood to the Lord, is holy to the Lord. It's separated for the Lord. And if by ransoming a man should ransom his tenth, then his fifth part he shall add to it, and it will be to him. And every tenth of oxen and sheep, and all which shall go through in the number by the rod measure, the tenth will be holy to the Lord. And then that's what goes to the Lord. You shall not barter it good for bad, nor bad for good. It's the Lord's. And if in bartering you should barter it, it shall be in its barter holy. It shall not be ransomed. These are the commandments which the Lord gave charge to Moses for the sons of Israel on Mount Sinai. And we continue in the next video seminar and with Moses and Aaron numbering Israel. And we will go through this book of the Bible, and it'll have more laws, and it will also have more things that deal with the movements of the people of Israel. Hope you'll continue in the books of Moses with us. Till the next time, God bless.